Diddy's mother Janice, the hidden story behind his rise. What if one of the biggest questions surrounding Diddy's story doesn't begin in the music industry at all? What if it begins years earlier, inside his childhood home? For decades, Sean Diddy Combs has been known as a music mogul, entrepreneur, producer, and one of the most powerful figures in hip-hop. But now, renewed attention is being placed on a person who was there long before Bad Boy Records, the celebrity parties, and the fame, his mother, Janice Combs. New documentaries and interviews have brought old stories back into the spotlight, raising questions about Janice's influence on Diddy's personality, ambition, business mindset, and the environment he grew up in. But there is an important distinction. Some of the claims surrounding Janice are allegations and accounts from people connected to Diddy's past. They have not all been independently verified, and Janice has publicly rejected claims she believes misrepresent her family. So what is actually known about Diddy's relationship with his mother? And could his childhood help explain the man he eventually became? Diddy lost his father, Melvin Combs, when he was still very young. That left Janice as one of the most important figures in his childhood. People who knew the family have described Janice as ambitious, social, and determined to give her son opportunities. Diddy grew up around people, parties, music, fashion, and social connections. According to accounts featured in documentaries about his life, the family home could become a gathering place where Diddy watched adults interact, entertainers perform, and influential people move through the environment. For a young child, that kind of atmosphere can leave a powerful impression. He was learning early that relationships mattered. That confidence mattered. That being seen mattered. And that knowing the right people could open doors. Years later, those same principles would become central to Diddy's career. He didn't simply want to make music. He wanted to build an empire. Bad Boy Records became one of the most recognizable names in hip-hop. And Diddy developed a reputation for understanding image, branding, celebrity culture, and business. But some former associates have argued that his mother played a much bigger role in shaping that mindset than people realized. Gene Deal, who worked around Diddy during the Bad Boy era, has spoken publicly about the close relationship between Diddy and Janice. Other people interviewed in documentaries have also described Janice as someone who remained heavily involved in her son's life. That doesn't prove every allegation made about the family. But it does raise an interesting question. How much of Diddy's personality was shaped by the world he saw growing up? One of the most controversial parts of the story involves claims about parties allegedly taking place around the family. Some former associates have described an environment where adults gathered frequently, and where Diddy was exposed to things at a young age that most children would never normally encounter. These accounts have been repeated in documentaries and interviews, but they should be treated carefully because they are allegations and personal recollections rather than established facts. Still, the claims have generated enormous attention because they are being connected to the much later controversies surrounding Diddy's adult life. Critics argue that the environment of his childhood may have influenced his understanding of power, celebrity, partying, and relationships. Others say that connection is impossible to prove. And that distinction matters. A person's childhood can influence them, but it does not automatically explain or excuse everything they do as an adult. There is another part of Janice's story that has attracted attention, her connection to Diddy's business world. Some accounts have claimed that Janice was involved in financial or corporate decisions connected to her son's empire. Other interviews have raised questions about why certain business structures may have been organized in particular ways. One controversial theory concerns liability connected to a tragic event from Diddy's early career. In December 1991, a charity basketball event organized by Diddy and Heavy D at City College of New York ended in disaster. A crowd surge resulted in 9 deaths and numerous injuries. The tragedy led to lawsuits and years of controversy. Former associates have since discussed questions surrounding security and crowd control at the event. Gene Deal has claimed that security decisions played a role in what happened. But responsibility for the tragedy is a matter that must be discussed through documented facts and legal records, not simply through accusations made years later. The event, nevertheless, became one of the darkest chapters connected to Diddy's early rise. And according to some documentary interviews, it also became part of the reason people later questioned how Diddy structured his business interests. But again, those claims should not automatically be treated as proven facts. What is much harder to dispute is Janice's importance to Diddy personally. She wasn't simply a distant parent watching her son become famous. She remained part of his public life. Diddy has spoken affectionately about his mother over the years, and public appearances have shown the two of them together at events and celebrations. That close bond has also become a major topic of discussion, as Diddy faces intense public scrutiny. Some commentators have questioned whether Janice knew about every aspect of her son's adult lifestyle. Others argue that being present at ordinary parties does not prove knowledge of private events or illegal activity. That distinction is crucial. Being someone's mother does not mean you automatically know everything happening in their life. And being present at a public event does not establish participation in anything happening privately. Janice herself has pushed back against portrayals of her family. She has argued that some descriptions of Diddy's childhood are inaccurate and misleading, and has defended her son publicly. That creates a fascinating conflict. On one side are former associates and documentary interviews presenting their memories of Diddy's childhood. On the other side is his mother, who says the public is being given a distorted picture of her family. So where does that leave us? Perhaps the biggest takeaway isn't that Janice Combs was secretly responsible for everything Diddy eventually became. There is no evidence that allows us to make that simple conclusion. Instead, the more interesting story is about influence. Janice was one of the strongest figures in Diddy's early life. She raised him after the death of his father. She was around during the years when he developed his confidence and ambition. And she remained connected to his world even after he became one of the most famous men in entertainment. That doesn't prove she caused his later controversies, but it does make her part of the larger story. And now, with documentaries revisiting Diddy's past, Janice Combs is once again at the center of the conversation. The bigger question isn't simply, was Janice involved? The real question is, how much did Diddy's childhood environment shape the person he eventually became? Because before Bad Boy Records, before the millions, before the celebrity parties, before the headlines, there was a young boy growing up in New York, watching his mother build a life around ambition, connections, and survival. And perhaps that is the part of Diddy's story that deserves the closest look. Not because it gives us an easy explanation for everything that happened later, but because sometimes, to understand a powerful person's rise, you have to go back to where the story started. And for Diddy, that story starts with Janice Combs.